She offered her body for a ride, but the cowboy put her on his horse and said, "Now you're safe." Emma's heart pounded as she ran across the empty stretch of highway. The sun was low on the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. The air was dry, carrying a sharp wind that made her eyes water and her throat dry. She didn't dare look back. Every sound, the rustling of the dry grass, the whistle of the wind, even the distant cry of a bird, made her jump. She felt exposed, like anyone could appear from the shadows and take advantage of her fear. She had never felt so small and powerless in her life. She stumbled over a loose rock and caught herself just in time. Her palms were scraped and her legs ached, but she didn't stop. She had to keep moving. The man she had been with had become someone she barely recognized. At first, it had seemed harmless, friendly, and even caring. But over time, his words and actions had turned controlling. He had isolated her, manipulated her, and now she realized how dangerous it had become. She had to leave, no matter what it took. Her mind raced as she considered her options. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions, a ribbon of gray cutting through the desert. There were no cars, no houses, no people, just the empty road and the setting sun. She could see the shadows lengthening across the cracked asphalt. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her shoes were dusty and her legs burned with exhaustion. She wanted to scream, to call for help, but she knew that would only give away her location. Emma remembered the stories she had heard about people disappearing in isolated areas like this. She didn't want to become one of those stories. She had grown up learning to be cautious, but she never imagined that caution would matter so much, so suddenly. Her thoughts bounced between fear and determination. She was terrified, yes, but she was also determined to survive, to reach safety. Somehow she had to find someone who could help her, someone who would not take advantage of her fear. As she ran, she thought about the man who had trapped her in this situation. He had seemed charming at first, with easy laughter and confident gestures, but it had all been a trap. He had slowly tightened control over her, isolating her from friends and family, making her feel that she had no choice but to follow him. The realization now hit her like a physical blow. She had allowed herself to trust the wrong person. She felt a mixture of anger and shame, but mostly she felt fear. Fear that if she didn't escape soon, she might not get another chance. Her legs screamed with exhaustion, and she slowed to a fast walk, careful to keep moving. Every shadow along the road seemed to hold a threat. She squinted into the distance, searching for anything that might signal help: an approaching car, a house, a person, but there was nothing. The desert stretched endlessly, barren and silent except for the wind. The silence pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one darker than the last. She remembered that she had no phone signal, no way to call for help. Her heart sank further, but she forced herself to keep going. She reminded herself that she had survived this long. She had escaped once and she could do it again. She had to keep believing that there was hope, even in a place that seemed so hopeless. After what felt like hours, she noticed a faint movement in the distance. At first she thought it was a mirage, a trick of the heat and light, but as she focused, she realized it was a person riding along the road. The figure was on horseback, moving steadily, kicking up small clouds of dust. Emma froze for a moment. Her instincts screamed to hide, to run in a different direction, but something about the figure gave her pause. The rider was alone, and yet there was a calmness about them that was different from the threat she had fled. Her mind raced. Could this person help her, or would they be another danger? She had no way of knowing, but her exhaustion and fear made it impossible to keep running forever. She slowed her pace, unsure of what to do. Her mind played over the possible outcomes. She could try to wave, call out for help, or keep moving quietly and hope they didn't notice her. Every choice carried risk. As the rider drew closer, she could see details more clearly. He was a man dressed in worn jeans and a wide-brimmed hat. His posture was confident but not aggressive. There was a calm authority in the way he sat on the horse, and his eyes scanned the road carefully, as if he could sense something that Emma couldn't. He noticed her almost immediately, and his horse slowed to a steady walk as he approached. Emma's heart raced. She had never been this vulnerable in her life, and yet there was something in the man's demeanor that made her hesitate to turn away. He didn't make any sudden movements, didn't speak harshly or demand anything. Instead, he nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and gestured toward his horse. At first, Emma didn't understand, but then a thought struck her. Perhaps he wanted to help. Perhaps, finally, she had found someone who could keep her safe. She took a cautious step forward, her legs trembling from exhaustion and fear. The rider's horse shifted slightly to allow her to get closer. Emma's mind was a mix of hope and caution. She wanted to trust him, but years of caution and survival instincts screamed at her to be careful. Still, her body ached, her energy was gone, and the thought of continuing alone was unbearable. She inched closer, her hand reaching out to the horse's mane. The man spoke softly, his voice calm and steady. "You're safe now," he said. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that Emma hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't a command, a threat, or a demand. It was reassurance. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Relief and disbelief collided inside her. After all she had endured, after all the fear and danger, someone was offering her protection without asking for anything in return. She mounted the horse carefully, still unsure if this was real. The rider adjusted his own position, making space for her. His presence was steady, a shield against the fear that had gripped her for hours. Emma felt her body relax slightly, though her mind was still alert. Every noise, every movement still made her flinch, but now there was a sense of safety that she hadn't felt before. She clung to the horse's mane, trying to steady her shaking hands. As they began moving down the road, the wind carrying the scent of dry earth and sagebrush, Emma felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. The man didn't speak much, letting her gather her thoughts and catch her breath. Occasionally, he would glance back at her, making sure she was okay. She realized that she had been alone in a dangerous world for so long that this simple act of kindness felt almost miraculous. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emma allowed herself to breathe. She looked at the horizon, at the fading light, and felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she could survive this. Maybe she could find safety and begin to heal. She didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time, she felt that she was no longer entirely at the mercy of fear. As they rode on, Emma's thoughts turned to the future. She didn't yet know where they were going or how long the journey would be, but she knew she had a chance. She had found someone willing to protect her without expecting anything in return. And in a world that had seemed so dark and dangerous, that was a gift beyond measure. She looked at the man beside her, a stranger who had become her guardian in a moment of crisis. His face was calm, eyes steady, and Emma felt a small smile form on her lips. Maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. And in that thought, in that fleeting sense of hope, she found a strength she didn't know she had. Emma held tightly to the horse's mane as they rode steadily down the long, empty road. The sun had dipped lower, and the sky was now painted in deep shades of red and purple. The wind brushed past her face, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and dry earth. Every muscle in her body ached, and yet she felt a strange sense of safety she hadn't felt in hours. The cowboy rode calmly beside her, his posture relaxed but alert, as if he could sense the dangers even before they appeared. At first, Emma found it difficult to speak. Her throat was dry and her voice felt weak. She wanted to ask him questions, where they were going, who he was, why he had helped her, but the words refused to come. Instead, she kept her gaze fixed on the horizon, on the fading light that made the desert look endless and mysterious. She felt exposed, still wary, even with someone protecting her. Years of instinct told her to be careful, to trust no one, but somehow she knew this man was different. The cowboy finally broke the silence. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. It wasn't a question that demanded an answer. It was a genuine inquiry, one that made Emma feel seen rather than judged. She shook her head slowly. Her arms and legs ached from running and her hands were scraped, but there were no serious injuries. Still, she couldn't find her voice to speak. "You can speak when you're ready," he said after a pause. "No rush." That simple statement made her chest tighten with relief. Most people would have rushed her, demanded answers, or assumed the worst. But he seemed to understand that she needed time. That trust couldn't be forced. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the horse's steady rhythm beneath her. It was almost hypnotic, a gentle rise and fall that made her realize just how tense she had been. Minutes passed, and the desert stretched endlessly around them. The road was cracked in places, and the wild grass brushed against the horse's legs as they moved. Emma noticed the faint sound of the horse's hooves against the asphalt, steady and reliable. It was a comforting sound, grounding her in the present. She realized how long it had been since she had felt this kind of calm, this simple, unthreatened moment where she could just breathe. The cowboy glanced at her briefly. "You're safe now," he said again, almost as a reminder to himself as much as to her. Emma nodded, feeling tears prick at her eyes. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but words felt too heavy. Instead, she simply breathed in and out, letting the fear she had carried for so long start to loosen. As they continued, Emma began to notice small details she hadn't had the chance to see before. The desert was alive in subtle ways. The way the wind moved through the dry brush, the occasional bird that flew low across the road, the soft creak of the horse's leather saddle. It was beautiful in a harsh and quiet way. She felt a small spark of wonder in the midst of her fear, realizing that the world was not entirely unsafe, even when she had felt so threatened. After some time, the cowboy shifted slightly on his horse and spoke again. "We'll find a place to rest soon." Just a little further. His voice was calm, patient, and it carried a weight of certainty that made Emma feel safer than she had in days. She nodded, trying to absorb the simple truth that there were still kind people in the world, even in the most unexpected places. The road began to rise into gentle hills, and the wind became cooler as the sun disappeared completely behind the horizon. Emma shivered slightly, realizing how exhausted she was. Her body had been running on adrenaline for so long that the fatigue was only now catching up. The cowboy seemed to notice, and without saying much, he slowed the horse to a steady walk, letting her catch her breath. "I know it's hard," he said softly. "You've been through a lot and it's okay to be tired. Just hold on a little longer." Emma wanted to nod, but her body felt heavy and slow. She realized she had been holding in every bit of tension for hours, bracing for threats that weren't coming. Now, with the cowboy beside her, she could finally start to let go, if only a little. She felt safe enough to glance at him properly for the first time. He was a middle-aged man with weathered features and kind eyes. His face showed experience and quiet strength, not arrogance or cruelty. It was a relief to see a face that reflected safety instead of danger. The ride continued in silence for a while, broken only by the soft clopping of the horse's hooves and the occasional whistle of the wind. Emma felt her mind begin to drift, thinking about what had led her here. She remembered the fear that had gripped her when she first realized the man she had trusted could hurt her. She remembered the feeling of helplessness, the desperate hope that someone, anyone, would come to help. And now here was that help, in the form of a calm, patient stranger who didn't demand anything from her. After some time, the cowboy guided the horse off the main road and onto a narrower dirt path that led through a grove of trees. The air was cooler here, and the shadows of the branches created patterns on the ground that made Emma feel enclosed and protected. The change in scenery helped her focus on something other than her fear. She looked around at the small details, the rough bark of the trees, the rustling leaves, the smell of earth and grass, and felt a small sense of wonder creeping back into her mind. The cowboy finally spoke again. "We're almost there," he said. Emma's curiosity got the better of her. Where are we going?" she asked softly, her voice still weak but more steady than before. "To a safe place," he replied simply. "Somewhere you can rest, eat, and get help if you need it. That's all you need to know for now." Emma nodded, realizing that asking more questions wouldn't help her yet. She needed to focus on the present, on staying alert but not panicked. She leaned slightly forward, trying to ease the tension in her back, and allowed herself to feel a little gratitude. She had survived this long, and now she had someone helping her who was trustworthy. As they rode, she noticed the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The desert night was quiet, almost peaceful, and she felt a strange contrast between the danger she had just escaped and the calm around her. It was as if the world itself had shifted, leaving her in a space where fear was no longer the only feeling she could experience. Occasionally, the cowboy glanced over at her, checking if she was okay. His attention was quiet but consistent, and it reassured her. She realized she had been alone for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone look out for her without judgment or expectation. It was a simple thing, but it carried immense weight in her mind and heart. Hours seemed to pass as they continued their journey, the rhythmic sound of the horses' hooves blending with the wind, and the occasional distant cry of a nocturnal animal. Emma found herself thinking about what safety really meant. It wasn't just about avoiding immediate danger. It was about feeling secure, having someone you could trust, and knowing that you could breathe without constant fear. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she realized she had that. Finally, the path opened into a small clearing, and the cowboy slowed the horse to a halt. In the dim moonlight, Emma could see a modest building in the distance, a small ranch house or a rest stop of some kind. Lights glimmered softly from within, suggesting warmth and safety. Relief washed over her, and she allowed herself to lean back slightly, closing her eyes for a moment. "You'll be safe here," the cowboy said. "Rest, and tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps." Emma nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She had made it through the desert, through fear and uncertainty, and now she had reached a place where she could finally begin to recover. She realized that this was only the beginning of her journey, but for the first time, she believed she could take the next step. The clearing widened as Emma and the cowboy approached, the small ranch house coming into clearer view. Its wooden walls looked worn but solid, and soft yellow light spilled from the windows, cutting through the darkness of the desert night. A faint smell of wood smoke drifted from the chimney, carrying with it a sense of warmth and comfort Emma hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. She could hear the gentle lowing of animals somewhere nearby and the distant chirp of crickets, a stark contrast to the emptiness of the road she had fled. The cowboy slowed the horse and guided it toward a sturdy wooden fence that surrounded the house. Emma's muscles ached from hours of riding and running, and she was grateful when the horse stopped. She dismounted carefully, letting her legs adjust to the solid ground. The shift from horse to earth was jarring but comforting. For the first time in many hours, she felt the weight of exhaustion fully settle over her. "You can rest here," the cowboy said softly. "No one will bother you. I'll take care of the horse." Emma nodded, unable to speak at first. Her mind was spinning, full of a mix of relief, fear, and disbelief. She had been running and hiding for hours, constantly alert to danger, and now here she was in a place that felt safe. She glanced at the cowboy, her eyes trying to convey the gratitude she couldn't put into words. He only nodded once, almost as if he understood her completely without her needing to explain. The house had a small porch with a single rocking chair that creaked gently in the evening breeze. Emma moved toward it, each step heavy, and sat down, finally allowing herself to rest. Her legs trembled, and her hands were still clammy with sweat. The cowboy returned after a moment, brushing off dust from the horse's saddle and giving it a quick pat. Emma watched quietly, fascinated by the calm, routine way he moved. There was a sense of competence and care in every action, a quiet confidence that reassured her. After a short while, the cowboy motioned for her to follow him inside. The house smelled of clean linens, wood polish, and the faint, comforting scent of home-cooked food. Emma hesitated at the door, still uncertain of her surroundings, but something in the warmth of the place made her step inside. She had been in empty, lonely spaces for hours, and this small, lived-in home felt almost miraculous. Inside, the cowboy guided her to a small room with a simple bed and a clean blanket. "You should rest," he said. "Eat if you want, drink if you want, no rush. Take your time." Emma nodded again, this time managing a small, grateful smile. She had been running on adrenaline and fear for so long that she hadn't eaten, hadn't had a chance to drink, and hadn't thought about her own needs. Now, as she sank onto the bed, the weight of her body pressing into the mattress, she realized just how exhausted she truly was. Tears came unbidden to her eyes, not from fear, but from the relief of finally being somewhere safe. The cowboy stayed in the room for a moment, making sure she was settled. "You're safe here," he repeated gently. "No one will harm you. Rest, and tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." Emma nodded, closing her eyes. The room was quiet except for the faint sounds of the house, creaking floorboards, the low hum of the wind outside, the occasional murmur from the animals in the barn. For the first time in what felt like days, she could simply breathe. The tension that had gripped her body for hours began to loosen, little by little. As she lay there, her mind drifted back to the events that had brought her here. The fear, the desperation, the constant alertness, it all came rushing back in vivid detail. She remembered running across the empty highway, heart pounding, every shadow a potential threat. She remembered the moments of panic, feeling trapped, believing that no one could help her. And she remembered the sudden, unexpected relief when the cowboy had appeared, calm and silent, offering safety without demand or judgment. The realization hit her fully. She had survived. She had escaped, and now she was safe. It was almost too much to process. Her body shook slightly, not from fear, but from the release of tension that had held her so tightly for so long. She felt a mixture of exhaustion, gratitude, and lingering fear, a complex swirl of emotions that left her both numb and aware. After a while, she got up slowly, moving toward a small table where a glass of water and a simple plate of food had been left. Her stomach ached, reminding her that she had eaten nothing since early morning. She drank the water slowly, savoring the coolness as it ran down her throat. Each bite of food was small, careful, but nourishing. As she ate, she thought about how her body had been running on survival instinct for so long that simple sustenance now felt like a luxury. The cowboy sat quietly in the corner of the room, watching her with gentle attentiveness. He didn't rush her, didn't demand explanations or stories. He simply allowed her to regain her strength, understanding that recovery began with small, practical steps. Emma felt a deep sense of respect for him, not just for saving her life but for respecting her pace, her space, and her dignity. Hours passed, and Emma began to feel more grounded. The initial shock of escape had faded slightly, replaced by a quiet awareness of her own resilience. She had survived something terrifying, and she had found someone who had helped her without judgment or expectation. It was a powerful reminder that not all people were cruel or selfish, even in situations that seemed hopeless. As night deepened, Emma moved to a window and looked out at the dark desert. The stars were bright and countless, a glittering sky that seemed both infinite and reassuring. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day settle over her. The silence of the desert, once frightening, now felt peaceful. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope. The cowboy approached quietly, carrying a small blanket. "If you're ready to sleep," he said softly, "you should rest. Your body and mind need it." Emma nodded, accepting the blanket with a small smile. She crawled under it, feeling its warmth and softness. She realized how little she had slept in the past day, how tightly her body had held on to fear. Now, in this safe space, she could finally relax. Her eyelids grew heavy, and for the first time in hours, she allowed herself to let go completely. As she drifted toward sleep, she reflected on the day's events. She had been afraid, alone, and desperate, yet she had found help when she least expected it. The journey ahead was still uncertain, and she knew she would have to face many challenges. But for now, she was alive, she was safe, and she was beginning to recover. Even in the quiet of the night, Emma felt a subtle strength rising within her. She realized that survival was not just about escaping danger. It was about trusting oneself, finding help, and allowing oneself to heal. She had taken the first step, and that step had brought her here to this room, this safe space, and this moment of calm. The cowboy settled in a chair nearby, keeping watch without intruding. Emma felt a mixture of gratitude and respect for him, recognizing the quiet heroism in his actions. He had not asked for anything in return, had not judged her, and had simply done what needed to be done. He had kept her safe. That act alone felt monumental, and Emma knew she would never forget it. As sleep finally took her, she felt a tentative sense of hope. The night was calm, the house warm, and for the first time, she believed that she could face the days to come. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she had survived the worst of it. And in that knowledge, she found a quiet courage, a determination to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The morning light filtered gently through the window, casting soft golden rays across the small room. Emma stirred awake, feeling the weight of the previous day still heavy on her body. Her muscles ached, and her mind was still foggy from exhaustion. Yet as she opened her eyes and took in the familiar surroundings of the ranch, she felt a quiet comfort that had been absent for so long. She was alive. She was safe. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she could think about tomorrow rather than just surviving the moment. She sat up slowly, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. Her feet touched the cool wooden floor, and she shivered slightly. The cowboy had already left the room quietly, leaving her a small basin of water and a clean towel. Emma washed her face and hands, letting the water carry away some of the fatigue and tension that had built up inside her. The simple act of washing her face felt almost ceremonial, as if she were washing away not only the dust and sweat, but also the lingering fear from the desert and the long night before. She wrapped herself in a clean towel and stepped toward the door. In the kitchen, the cowboy had started a small breakfast, warm bread, fresh fruit, and a cup of steaming tea. The smell of food made Emma's stomach growl, reminding her that she had eaten very little the day before. The sight of someone preparing a meal for her without expectation or judgment filled her with a strange, almost overwhelming gratitude. "Good morning," the cowboy said quietly, his voice calm and steady. "Sleep well," Emma nodded, her voice still small and hoarse. Yes." "Thank you, you're welcome," he replied simply. "Eat slowly, you need your strength." She sat down and took small bites, savoring each taste. The food was simple, but it was enough, and the act of eating felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she had lost in the chaos of the previous day. She noticed how patient the cowboy was, giving her space to eat at her own pace. There was no rush, no questions, no pressure, just quiet support. It was a kind of safety she hadn't known she needed until now. After breakfast, the cowboy suggested they take a short walk outside to enjoy the morning air. Emma hesitated at first, unsure of her strength or her readiness to face the outside world, but the sunlight felt inviting rather than threatening. She followed him quietly, taking slow, deliberate steps across the soft dirt paths surrounding the ranch. The desert beyond the ranch seemed vast and endless, but in the proximity of the house, with the warmth of the sunlight and the presence of someone she could trust, it felt manageable. As they walked, Emma found herself opening up in small ways, sharing bits of her story without fully realizing it. She told him about the long day she had endured, about the fear and desperation she had felt on the highway. She didn't go into all the details, she wasn't ready, but the act of speaking, even in fragments, was liberating. The cowboy listened patiently, nodding occasionally, never pressing for more than she was willing to give. "You were very brave," he said finally. "Most people would have frozen in that situation. You kept moving, kept thinking. That courage saved you." Emma felt a flicker of pride, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Her fear had been overwhelming, but she had acted despite it. She realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward even when the fear was there. Hearing someone else recognize that strength helped her see herself differently. She wasn't just a victim of circumstance, she was a survivor. The morning passed slowly, marked by small, comforting routines. They tended to the horse, watered the small garden, and fed the animals. Each task was simple, yet Emma found a strange sense of normalcy in these ordinary actions. She felt her mind quieting, the constant swirl of fear and adrenaline beginning to settle. The cowboy's calm presence was a stabilizing force, showing her that life could still be steady, predictable, and safe. At one point, they sat on a wooden bench outside the house, watching the desert stretch out to the horizon. The cowboy didn't speak, and for a long while neither did Emma. She felt the warmth of the sun on her skin, heard the soft rustling of the trees, and noticed the subtle beauty of the landscape. The world was still vast and sometimes intimidating, but now it also held promise and quiet wonder. "You're stronger than you realize," the cowboy said after a while. "It's okay to feel fear, but don't let it define you. You survived, and that means you can face what comes next." Emma nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She felt a mixture of relief and hope, a sense that the past did not have to dictate her future. The cowboy's words were simple, yet they carried weight, a reminder that her experiences, while painful, did not diminish her value or her ability to move forward. Throughout the day, Emma began to reflect more deeply on what had happened. She realized that trust had been a fragile thing for her, something she had lost in the chaos of the previous day. But now she was learning that trust could be restored, even slowly, with small acts of care and respect. The cowboy's quiet reliability, his patience, and his refusal to judge or pressure her were showing her a different kind of human connection, one built on empathy and integrity. By mid-afternoon, Emma found herself exploring the property on her own, feeling a cautious sense of freedom. She walked along a small path that led to a hill behind the house, where she could see the desert stretching endlessly in every direction. The wind was cool and the view was breathtaking. For the first time in what felt like ages, she felt a sense of peace. The vastness of the desert, once frightening, now seemed like a space where she could exist without constant fear. Sitting on a large rock at the top of the hill, Emma closed her eyes and let the breeze wash over her. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the desperation, the encounter with the cowboy, and realized how much she had endured. She allowed herself to feel gratitude, not just for the safety she had found, but for her own resilience. She had acted when she needed to, had trusted her instincts, and had survived. That survival was something she could carry forward, a foundation on which she could begin to rebuild. When she returned to the house, the cowboy was tending to the horse, brushing its coat and checking its hooves. Emma helped in small ways, finding comfort in the rhythm of caring for the animal. The simple tasks, brushing, feeding, checking the water, were grounding, connecting her to the present moment and to the reality of life continuing beyond fear. As evening approached, Emma and the cowboy sat together on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold once more. The silence between them was comfortable, a shared understanding that didn't require words. Emma felt a quiet gratitude for his presence, not just as a protector, but as a guide helping her navigate the delicate transition from fear to safety. "You're beginning to heal," he said softly. "It doesn't happen all at once, but each step counts." "Today you've taken many steps." Emma nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. She realized he was right. Healing wouldn't be instant, and the memories of the day she had fled would linger. But she also knew that each moment she spent in safety, each act of trust she allowed herself, was a step toward reclaiming her life. As night fell, Emma prepared for bed once more, feeling a mix of exhaustion and calm. She reflected on the day, recognizing the subtle growth she had experienced. The fear that had once dominated her thoughts had not disappeared, but it had softened. The presence of someone who respected her boundaries and offered protection without expectation had allowed her to begin processing her experiences. Before sleep claimed her, Emma looked out the window at the starlit desert. She felt a quiet determination rising within her, a promise to herself that she would continue moving forward, one careful, mindful step at a time. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she now knew that safety, trust, and resilience were possible. And for the first time in a long time, she believed that she could face the future with hope. The first rays of dawn peeked through the small window, bathing the room in soft golden light. Emma stirred awake, feeling more rested than she had in days. Her body ached slightly from the long ride and the tension of the past days, but there was a new energy in her, a quiet strength that had been growing within her. She stretched carefully, taking in the calm of the ranch house. Outside, the desert was waking up, birds singing faintly and the wind whispering through the trees. She rose and went to the small table where a light breakfast had been prepared, fresh bread, soft fruit, and a cup of tea. The simplicity of the meal, combined with the warmth of the morning, made her realize how much she had missed everyday normalcy. She drank the tea slowly, savoring the calm. Each sip reminded her that she was alive, that she had survived, and that the world could still be a place of safety and comfort. The cowboy entered the room quietly, giving her a gentle nod. "Good morning," he said softly. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes," Emma replied, her voice stronger than yesterday. "Thank you for everything." "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Just focus on yourself today, that's enough." Emma smiled faintly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had spent so much time worrying about survival, so much time running from fear, that these small gestures of kindness felt monumental. Today, for the first time, she felt she could allow herself to think beyond mere survival. After breakfast, she stepped outside, the morning sun casting long shadows across the ground. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, but instead of feeling threatening, it now felt like a space of opportunity. She could see mountains in the distance, trees swaying gently, and the small farmhouse nestled safely in its clearing. The view reminded her that while the world could be harsh, there were pockets of safety and peace worth seeking out. The cowboy suggested a short ride before the heat of the day. Emma hesitated for a moment, wondering if she was ready, but then realized that she felt stronger, more capable than she had the day before. She mounted the horse with care, feeling the steady rhythm beneath her once again. The ride was quiet at first, filled with the soft sounds of hooves against the dirt path and the whispering wind. Emma felt her mind clear, the lingering fear of yesterday replaced by a tentative sense of confidence. "You've come a long way in a short time," the cowboy said as they rode side by side. "Not just in distance, but in how you carry yourself. You're beginning to trust yourself again." Emma absorbed the words, letting them settle. She realized he was right. In the past 2 days, she had moved from fear and desperation to safety and calm. She had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was taking action even when fear was present. She had survived, and she had done so by trusting both her instincts and the help offered by someone who respected her. That combination of self-reliance and openness to trust felt empowering. As the morning progressed, Emma and the cowboy returned to the ranch. She helped tend to the animals again, brushing the horse and feeding the smaller creatures in the pen. These simple routines felt grounding, almost meditative. Each small task reminded her that life was composed of ordinary moments, and that safety and peace could be found in the small, consistent actions of each day. She realized that healing was not just emotional, it was practical too. Caring for herself and her surroundings was part of regaining control over her life. Later, Emma sat on a small wooden bench outside the house, the sun high in the sky, casting a warm glow. She looked at the horizon, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been terrifying, but it had also been transformative. She had faced her fear, acted with courage, and found help in an unexpected place. She realized that even in the darkest moments, the world could still hold kindness and compassion. The cowboy joined her, sitting quietly on the bench. "You're stronger than you know," he said. "You've faced danger, exhaustion, and fear, and you're still standing. That strength is yours, and it will carry you through whatever comes next." Emma nodded slowly, feeling the truth of his words sink in. She had learned that strength was not about always being fearless, but about continuing forward despite fear. She had learned that safety could be found in small, trusted actions, and that human kindness could appear even in unexpected moments. Most importantly, she had learned to trust herself again. As the afternoon approached, Emma began to think about the future. She knew that life would not always be easy, and that she would have to face challenges ahead. But now she felt equipped to face them with courage and clarity. She had survived the worst of the immediate danger, and she had been reminded of her own resilience. She could rebuild step by step, knowing that safety and hope were possible. She spent the next few hours organizing her belongings, tidying the small room she had stayed in, and preparing for the next stage of her journey. She thought about the people she had left behind, the friends and family who would worry, and realized that she wanted to reconnect with them. The idea made her heart flutter with nervous excitement, but it also reminded her of the importance of connection and trust in her life. As evening came, the cowboy prepared a light meal, and they ate together in companionable silence. Emma felt a sense of normalcy returning, a rhythm of life that was predictable and comforting. The fear that had dominated her days was no longer controlling her thoughts. She could laugh softly at small things, notice the beauty around her, and reflect without being overwhelmed. After the meal, Emma walked outside to the edge of the property, where she could see the sun setting behind distant hills. The sky was painted with deep reds and golds, the light reflecting off the desert rocks in a dazzling display. She felt a sense of closure, a feeling that she had come through a chapter of her life and was ready to begin a new one. The journey had tested her in ways she had never imagined, but it had also reminded her of her own resilience and the goodness that could exist in the world. The cowboy watched from a short distance, giving her space but remaining nearby. Emma felt a deep gratitude for his presence, recognizing that his role had been pivotal. He had not only saved her physically, but had also helped her begin to reclaim her sense of self. He had shown her that kindness, patience, and quiet strength could make a real difference, and that trust, once given carefully, could restore faith in others. As night fell, Emma returned to the porch, sitting quietly and reflecting on her journey. She realized that she had survived not only the immediate danger, but also the fear that had threatened to consume her. She had learned to trust herself, to recognize courage in her own actions, and to appreciate the quiet acts of care that could restore hope. She felt a calm determination to continue forward, building a life grounded in both self-reliance and openness to support from others. Before sleep, she looked up at the starlit sky, taking deep breaths and feeling a sense of peace settle over her. The journey had been long and frightening, but it had also been transformative. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, but now she had a foundation of strength, resilience, and trust on which to build. She was ready to face the future, whatever it might hold. The cowboy nodded to her from the doorway, a silent gesture of support and recognition. Emma smiled, feeling a sense of closure. The moment of fear and desperation had passed, replaced by confidence and hope. She had survived, she had learned, and she was ready to continue moving forward. As she finally closed her eyes and drifted into a deep, restful sleep, Emma felt a quiet certainty within her. The past had tested her, but it had not defeated her. The future was uncertain, but she had the strength and courage to meet it. And in that knowledge, she found a profound sense of peace.